Hi there, welcome to Bible/Chat. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Good. You're
Been a while.
taller,
Yeah, right.
less Asian.
Yes.
Where is Jason?
less smart?
Oh, stop. Well, that's true. That's true for all of us. I don't take this personally, but that's true for all of us. Jason, as we know, he may be small in stature, but large in brain.
So true.
Anyway, we won't insult him any further. So, except by calling him Judas. Just kidding. Okay, so we have a couple questions that came up, and we want to do some Bible/Chat videos.
Yep.
And so we're chatting about the Bible, and the specific thing that we want to talk about is the issue of care groups. Our church does care groups. Some churches call them small groups, growth groups, whatever. There's different names. Where does this idea come from? The idea of a small group doesn't seem that there's that like a statement in the New Testament that says you should be in a small group, anything like that.
Yeah.
Where do we get that biblically if we're going to have a small group, and why do we do it?
Yeah, I think it's a good question because obviously we have a lot of new people coming to our church, right? And so it's a question of like when you're acclimating to our church, why do we do this thing called care groups? And so I think, as I look at the text, I think it's a setting that provides us the opportunity to obey a lot of passages.
Okay.
I think of passages like Hebrews 3. When we were going in through Hebrews in care group a few years ago, Hebrews 3:12 commands us as believers. It says, "See to it, brothers, that there not be in any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God." And it says that there not be in any one of you that. And it says, "But encourage one another." So not just the elders to the congregation, but one another, like anybody. And care group is a great setting for that. Encourage one another day after day, as long as it is still called today, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. And so when you look at our church and you see the reality that all of us are vulnerable, the care group is really a mechanism designed by the elders to allow for the church to basically, the immune system of the church to function. Where we're encouraging each other, we're warning each other, not because we're grading each other or criticizing each other.
I mean, a little bit.
Right.
But that's mostly me to you. Just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, you basically have, a need to point out blind spots. I have blind spots. You have blind spots, and we all need that. And other people can see those, and so it's actually an environment. As one man said, it's a safe place for sinners to change.
Totally. That's really good.
And it's not a place for us to just come and say things, and just like confess a status update or something, and then go home. It's actually designed for that mutual encouragement, edification of the body. And that's what's really strategic about care group, because as we're seeing in our church, we've been down two teaching staff members.
Totally.
And we can feel that. And then of course we have the elders, but to think that you guys would be able to personally meet and counsel everybody in the church is not very practical.
Totally
on
impossible.
On a weekly level.
It's funny because that text, the command is to the whole body. Encourage one another. Like that requires every member of the body to be encouraging the other members of the body. And so we need a venue to do that. Like not just the talking head of a guy standing up talking, but the body is actually the means by which that, like you said, the immune system functions.
Yeah, and that's like Ephesians 4. I mean, you just like bump into this truth all over the place. You have Ephesians 4 where the elders are not doing everything for the church, but they're equipping the saints for the work of the ministry. So that work is actually carried out by the body to itself and among its members. And I mean, you see the elders are equipping every man. In Colossians 1, it says, "We proclaim him, Christ, admonishing every man and teaching every man so that we may present every man complete." And so there's a focus on individuals in the church. And when you think of how that's going to be carried out to the individual level, the decentralization of care groups is really helpful. Where you can, ask, somebody to go oversee a care group and see how people are doing, and just shepherd in that context rather than only isolating that to Sundays.
Yeah, totally. That makes such good sense. So when you think about like the internal workings of the church, in that sense, every member is crucial for the care of every other member, so that the body is building itself up, and that requirement has to happen. That's which care groups allow a venue for that to happen.
And it's not that it's impossible outside of that, but it's almost like if you're not in care group, it's kind of like, hey, you're missing out.
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
it's not so much like the elders, are here saying, like, oh, we're going to check boxes on, like we're grading people. Again,
Right.
it's not it's not for grades, it's for growth, right?
Totally.
Hebrews later says, to strengthen the hands that are weak and the knees that are feeble. And in the context, that's actually a collective effort to help heal each other.
Yeah.
And I mean, just being in care group, right? Like as care group leaders, both of us, but also just being in that environment, I'm encouraged.
Yeah.
You can see everyone else is encouraged. And I think one of the most rewarding things is to see that basically that scene when the body is just helping itself. When other people are counseling other people, and they're growing and they're maturing, and because God has done things in all our lives.
Yeah, totally.
And there's so much wisdom that somebody can give that I can't, or that totally, I might not think of. And it's just amazing to see that, the church functions on more than just a few men. It's actually really, really helpful and designed by God that we can all help each other.
Yeah. So that encouragement, that shepherding aspect of it, that is actually being decentralized all the time. Like there's a push out of that, as opposed to like a centralization, like, oh, everyone come to me, I'm the guy. But it's actually the other way around, like pushing people out so that they're able to grow, and then they're able to also then care for others who also need to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, and even to go to Ephesians 4, right? It's like that speaking the truth to one another, that we may grow up into the fullness of Christ. Like it's that idea of like raising each other up like kids, like totally. Raising, like any of us who are parents, like raising children, you want them to grow up and be able to shoulder weight, but also help and contribute to the collective good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's super encouraging, super helpful. So as a care group leader, I mean, obviously we're a little biased because, like you said, we both lead care groups, but you would encourage people like, hey, come to care group.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I mean, again, I think like you're missing out on like that rhythmic encouragement and prayer and deepening of fellowship. I mean, I've been to some big churches, and really big churches, and it's easy to treat it like a movie theater where you go and you listen to the sermon, you sit in the comfy seat, and then you leave and you talk about it on the way home, and then that's it. You know? But when you arrive at that home setting, that Bible study setting, that even at a big church was where we were saying, this is where it feels like church, because those one another's now have a context where that can happen.
That's super helpful. Yeah, you want to stay away from like the talking head professionalized model of like, hey, this is what church is all about. It's not actually. If that were the case, then online church would be fine, but it's not fine, right? The body is needed. Like if, apart from the body, we end up just being like severed hands and not really functioning well.
Yeah, so true.
Good. Or mostly severed hands. I don't know. Like just hanging on by it. Anyway, that's kind of gross. Anyway, okay, so that's super helpful. Thank you for that. That's good. As a care group leader, are there ways that you're trying to, or are you trying to like vest that kind of shepherding care? Like how does the care group vest that shepherding care into its members? Yeah,
so I think there is that leading by example, but also just making it explicit of why do we do this? I remember this, first year starting, this is my first year leading a care group and realizing, okay, we're gonna talk about why we do this. Because when you just show up and you acclimate to a new environment, it's easy just to forget or overlook, why am I doing this? And that's how pragmatism and a lot of bad methods of approaching church can creep in if we're not evaluating why we're doing what we're doing. So, saying like the expectation for, accountability or something is not to criticize each other, but it's also not to be liars. Like, no, I'm fine.
Everything's good.
It's like, no, God is actually growing all of us. And you talked about that in your sermon. I thought it was so helpful was, we admit our temptations, we confess our sins, and we can do that confidently, openly, because of the fact that God is growing us. And this is not final judgment. Like we're actually on the path back to Hebrews 12, laying aside the sin and the weight that so easily entangles. Let's press on. We're all going somewhere. And there's this mindset, as we're even learning about in Mark, right? With trying to preserve one another and keep peace among one another rather than like compete, in the Christian sphere. It's really like, let's all make it, let's all help each other.
Help each other to do that. Amen. That's awesome. Yeah, there's actually like tons of implications to that, like how we think about ministry and, how we interact with one another and how that becomes ministry, right? It's not something that we have to like go out and get. It's actually what's given to us through the body and just a whole host of things. But we can talk about those on another video because we're all very long-winded. So anyway.
This is a long one.
Yeah, well, hope that's helpful for you to think about care groups. We're going to do some more about care groups, a couple more, and just talk a little bit more philosophically and then maybe even some practical notions on those things. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.